everyone, and welcome to our Mentally Fit Schools webinar. Super excited to be here this evening with you all to have a conversation with a very good friend of mine. I'd like to start tonight with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather. We pay respect to elders past and present, and we acknowledge the rich culture of storytelling passed on for thousands of years. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Belinda Elworthy. I'm the CEO at Gotcha4Life, and I'm so pleased to be joined tonight with Gotcha4Life founder, who many of you will know as a very passionate advocate for mental fitness. So good to see you tonight, Gussie.
Great to see you, Bill, and thanks for everyone who's come on. I hear that we've got record numbers tonight, which just makes it fantastic, and it's obviously such a very, very important topic and one that we all can share and understand how important it is.
Definitely. Now, before we get into our conversation, I'll just start with some housekeeping. So just to confirm with everyone and to let you know that tonight's session is being recorded. And depending on how we go with the conversation, how long it takes us, there may be the opportunity for us to tackle some of your questions toward the end of the session. So if you've got any burning questions, please don't hesitate to type them into the Q&A, and that you can find that in a box at the bottom of your screen. And if Gus and I aren't able to tackle your questions, we'll definitely take them back to the team and see if we can tackle them in future webinars. Now, if you experience any technical difficulties, please try exiting and then re-entering the meeting. And if that doesn't work, you can reach out to our team on schools@gotcha4life.org, and we will assist you as quickly as we can. One last thing I'd love to mention is that we'd really love your feedback about our webinar today. At the end of the session, I'm going to be sharing a link to a really short survey. So please do take a few minutes to let us know what you think so that we can make sure that our webinars keep delivering value to our community. Okay, I think we can jump straight in now, Gussie. Really happy to have this chat with you. I know you and I chat a lot about parenting just in our day-to-day. We've shared lots of war stories. But I'm gonna tackle a few interesting topics with you today that maybe we haven't talked about before. And
Okay.
the first of those is in relation to what you have learned. So you're pretty well known for your role on the grill team and rush hour at Triple M, but also for the incredible work you've done in founding Gotcha4Life and being part of our team for the last almost 10 years. So I'd love to know from you, how has your role at Gotcha changed the way that you see parenting and the way that you parent?
Well, I've certainly given my mum and dad a bit more time off now from the stick that I might have given them when I was a kid, and realize how hard it is. I think basically the Man Up program, which started the whole journey for me, where that program was made after I had been open on Triple M and spoken about the sadness around my friend taking his own life. I basically from that moment on had an open mind to everything. I think I lived, Belle, in a bubble for many, many years. I think I was old school in the way that I parented. I parented the way that my dad and mum parented me, and dad was very old school because his dad was very old school. So he just did what he thought was right. And I suppose that starting point for me was my way or the highway. You're living under my roof and this is where we do it and so forth. And I could hear my father and mother in my own words and stuff. And I'm sure a lot of people listening now would go, I know exactly what that's like. As you're saying something, you go, oh God, that sounds like my mum and dad. But that's basically, I think, what I did because that's what I knew. But running Gotcha4Life and being part of Gotcha4Life and having so many beautiful, vulnerable conversations with parents and people that have little ones in their care over the last decade, I realize how hard it is, and how much better a listener you need to be. And I think if you ask my kids, and I've got three of them, 26, 24, and 22, a boy and two girls, I think if you ask them, Belle, is dad was dad a good dad? I think they'd know that I'm lovable and, caring and that sort of stuff. But I reckon in the last 10 years, they would say that I've become a better dad, a better listener. And that's been the key to it. Once I started listening and not fixing, I think that's was the real moment for me to realize that the kids just wanted me to hear them rather than me to fix it all the time.
Yeah, that's such an interesting concept because as a parent, just naturally you want to fix things for your kids. And sometimes we forget how capable they really are,
Mm,
firstly, that they may not need us to fix it, but also that they may just want us to listen. And that's that can feel really unnatural when you're used to being the one who has the answers, who has the solutions.
mm,
But listening really allows them to get out what's going on for them. And I definitely agree. I think for me, thinking about my three kids, if I did more listening, and that can be hard because often the house is busy, life is busy, and you're moving from thing to thing. But knowing that just by spending a little bit longer with them and asking them what they think, or how might you be able to solve this, or what else have you thought about, rather than going straight into solution mode, which is the way we may have experienced parenting. I think practicing that muscle is a really valuable one.
yeah, I think we know what we know because of what we've seen in our own growing up, right? But the world is such a different place, and I think we'll talk about that a bit more over the next hour or so. Is that, the kids are now growing up in such a different place to where we grew up, which is obviously very different to where our mum and dad grew up, where they learn all their lessons. So this is something where if we listen to the kids, take our ego out a little bit and realize that they may just have a solution themselves, or they may just want to have you hear what's going on. So many conversations get shut down with parents automatically because they love them, go, right, this is how I'm going to fix it. Well, that's not what
Yeah.
they want. And I've
Yeah.
had I've had a few opportunities like that, especially around my son, where I've just made a real mess of it.
Well, I don't think you'd be alone there. And I remember when I first became a mom, and I thought, gosh, this is the most important role I've ever had. This is my most important job, and I've done no training for this. I'm in charge of these beautiful little babies,
Yeah.
and so much of what we do is just what comes naturally to us. There's definitely there's no rule book. There's so many incredible parenting experts. There's so much more research around parenting and best practice, and you can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, but there is no set of rules that applies to every family. I think one of the things about parenting is like looking out for the lessons along the way, because when we do that, we grow as our kids grow. And, one of the things, in preparing for tonight, is wondering from your perspective, you've had over 20 years of parenting, over 60 or 70 if you add them all up that way. Um, what's a really memorable lesson that you've learned along the way?
Bella and absolute Barry Crocker one afternoon. I was doing breakfast radio, so I was always did the afternoon pickups and so forth. And Jack was at Valley Boys, which if people know on the northern beach of Sydney was a couple of buses to get home. And I'd picked up the girls at Mona Vale Public and was home, and they were playing and eating and doing what they were doing for the afternoon. And Jack came home and he came and just sat with me, which was very strange. Normally he'd drop his bag, go and get something to eat, and he'd be in his room or he'd be kicking a footy around or something. He just sat with me. And I said, "What's wrong, mate?" And he showed me his hand. And on his hand, he had got a pen during the day and just made little marks on it for every time he was called a name by this particular bully at the school. And there was 21 little marks on there. And of course, I went into, this, what do you mean, mate? What's happened? Explain. But I didn't really let him properly explain it. I went immediately, "You'll never go back to that school again." I then phoned up a friend of mine who knew the headmaster at the posh school down the road, which Jack didn't want to go to. But I said, "Well, now you're going to go to that school because I've told you that that other school wasn't good enough." By the time Half an hour or so had gone. He was never going back to that school. He was enrolled in the new school. They were going to open up the clothing pool for him for the next morning so he could get some clothes and so forth. By the time my wife came home 45 minutes later, she goes, "Have you asked Jack if that's what he wants?" And I'm like, "Well, of course he wants that. He doesn't want to have another day like that." But she was like, "Just slow down." And of course, an hour later, once Vix had spoken to him and calmed everything down, it was just he wanted to share that with me, and he
Yeah.
wanted to get some knowledge from me, and in the end from Vix, on how he should handle it. Because he knew that that bully was going to be at that school. He didn't know if he'd want to be the dobber that had dobbed him into teachers. He just needed a little bit of guidance. And of course, Vix gave him that. We then went up to the headmaster, explained it, and that boy eventually was expelled only a few days later because Jack was brave enough to say it, and a few other kids then came forward. So I could have saved us a lot of turmoil, a lot of anger, and Jack literally remembers that to the day. That was 11 years ago, and he still remembers the afternoon that Dad, absolutely lost it, and that's not cool, and I had to learn from that. And I'm saying it now because I think I have learned from it. And from that moment on, I was a much better listener, and that then the girls were better because of that too, because I shared the same thing with them.
Well, I think in your defense, it shows that, Jack felt safe enough to share that with you in the first place, which is pretty cool. And that's what, as a first step, we want. We want our kids to be able to share the tricky stuff with us, not just, oh, I did well on this exam, or, sometimes they think they need to keep impressing us. And when things are tough, they might not have that confidence to raise it with mum or dad. So, I think that's a really beautiful thing that he felt safe enough to share that with you. And thank God for Vix. And you
Well,
know,
that's for,
and
that's for sure. And another thing, Belle, is I speak to a lot of school kids now, and they tell me that they know their mum loves them, they know their dad loves them, know that grandma and granddad, the carer, loves them. They just haven't got the words to explain how they're feeling. So they're
yeah,
not going to start the conversation of what we call gravity at Gotcha for Life, that conversation outside of the norm, like you say, outside of an exam or making a team or not making a team or whatever it might be. That conversation where they actually don't know how they feel is very difficult to have. So they come home and they look around and they see everyone busy and they see people on phones and whatever, and they go, you know what? I'm going to sound silly trying to explain how I feel here. So I'm not going to have that conversation at all. And that's the build up. So you can be a really good parent, and sometimes you just don't get the information because the kids haven't got the emotional muscle to explain it and they don't want to sound silly.
yeah, absolutely. We've talked in the past about how at home I ask the boys, how's your mental fitness on a scale of 1 to 10 today? And I've been doing that for a few years now, and it's just become something that is really easy to respond to now, and it just opens up the conversation.
Yeah.
Something that you've been saying to me lately, and I know to a lot of your friends and people who work at Gotcha, which is a similar one, and another, to come at it from another angle is how's your head and how's your heart today out of 10?
Yeah. I sent out like I'm trying to keep it, and I think at Gotcha we try to keep it as simple as possible. And it's the one thing that I do remember from college, the KISS formula: keep it simple, silly, or keep it simple. You're not allowed to say the other word these days, but keep it simple, silly. So I'm thinking if I can just get a read from my friends on how they're going, and if they're honest with me, then I can get the honest answer back. Sometimes it's a 3 out of 10. It's a 4 out of 10. The body's feeling okay, but the head's not fantastic. And I will then know what to do. I send them a silly meme, I send them a joke, I give them a phone call. It's just a way for my village, the people that I love the most, to know that they're not alone. And that's really what it comes down to. And I feel that my kids, as I was going on the journey of building Gotcha for Life, they realized that I was someone that was always going to be there for them. They could phone me, and I wasn't going to be that father that would judge them. I would be there to help them out of whatever situation they were in. So
Mm.
just a simple text message. Everyone's got their phones. What's your number out of 10 if you just want to start there. But the body, and the head and the heart is a nice way of looking at it as well.
Yeah, and I think it's the kids might if you're thinking about bringing something like this into your home, the kids might turn their noses up at first at it. Might be like whatever, or they might not get it. I definitely think it's worth having a crack with it and sticking with it because it's amazing how these little rituals can start to create an environment at home where it shows that your parents do really care about this. We care about your heart, we care about your head, we care about how you're looking after yourself, your body, and your health as well. And finding different ways to say it, rather than how's school today? And we all know what they say to that. I mean, you get a grunt in the teen years, or you might get it's good, if you're lucky. So I love just having some of these different ways to just unlock them a little bit and trying them at different times.
And
Um,
consistently doing it, Bill. Like, you can't do, we talk all the time about all the workshops that we do. It's mental fitness. You can't just go to the gym once and run a marathon. You need to consistently be doing this. And mums and dads have to be a bit vulnerable too. You're a human being at the end of the day. You don't need to be the person that has the answers to everything. I remember Jack once said to me, he asked me a question, and I said, I actually don't know the answer. And he nearly fell over because
mm,
for every single second since he was born, I'd been having a lucky guess or having a bit of a crack or BSing him on the answer because I thought that was my role to be that person that had all the answers. As soon as he realized I didn't, it took a lot of pressure off him. It made
yeah,
him realize that he didn't have to have all the answers as well. He was thinking at 18 he could drink, he had to learn how to drive, he had to make decisions on what he's going to do for the rest of his life, and he needed to have all the answers to these things. It's of course nonsense. So once you show a little bit of vulnerability, that takes the pressure off your child as well to realize it's okay to bumble around and fumble around a little bit because we're still doing that in our 40s, 50s, and 60s.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really wonderful thing to show your kids that you're human, um,
Yeah,
to let
yeah.
them know that you're not perfect and they don't need to be either. Because I think as a baseline, most kids do think their parents are perfect and that they have all the answers. So us showing that vulnerability is really opening that door to showing that we are human and that we make mistakes. And that I think that builds connection with our kids. And I think it takes the pressure off them as well.
We're throwing away perfect. We've been saying that at Gotcha since day one. I think most kids think their parents when they're in primary school are perfect,
Mm,
Superman without the cape and all that. That drifts away a little bit as they start getting into secondary.
totally. The
Um,
most uncool thing ever in high school.
but there's a really good moment in there somewhere where they turn back around and think, actually, we know you're not superheroes, but you're actually okay and you're pretty good and you're doing your best and stuff. You just got to hang in there for that period of uncertainty and don't muck it up too much by ruining the relationship in that time. And that all comes down to showing a bit of vulnerability yourself. And then they soon realize that you're just like them and we all worry alone a bit too much and we need to be a bit more open about our feelings.
Yeah, definitely. I know when we think back to those years, with my kids when they were all in primary school and for you when your three were all in primary school, I think those years can be challenging in a really unique way. The teen years present other challenges, but primary school can really stretch us as parents. And I think one thing that you and I talk about a lot is that we often don't get it right even when we have all the knowledge and skills, we are running programs with teachers, with kids, and with parents. That's what we do at Gotcha for Life. But at the end of the day, we're still humans. And even if we have all the knowledge and the skills in the world, we still feel all the feelings and we can easily get triggered by our kids, usually because we love them so much and we care
Yeah.
deeply about this role of being a parent. Um, we definitely need to, I think, embrace the fact that no one gets it right all the time.
We're
What do you
doing our
think
best,
about that?
Belle. We're doing our best. You know what I mean? That's absolutely key. And like you say, we make mistakes because we are so emotional. We love them so much and we want to protect them and we want to make sure they're okay. And that's all good intentions and so forth. But because of that emotional side to it, of course, we're going to act in a way that's not quite right some of the time. So the key for me was when I have done something wrong is try to be better next time. And I know it sounds a little dull, but that's literally what it came down to for me is like, don't make your kid feel like that again. Don't be that person again, learn from it. And that comes down to me again, to my village, talking to my mates and going, gee, I've put my foot in it the other day, gee, I haven't done that right or whatever. And normally one of my mates has gone, well, I did the same thing and now I do this.
Mm.
Or I understand where you're coming from, brother. Yeah, you don't want to do that again. It just sort of, it's sharing the good and the bad.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something we've been talking a lot about recently is this idea of a reset in the family. So I know when the kids were quite a bit younger, if they were, having a tantrum or getting themselves into an emotional space that they just couldn't get out of, I used to talk to them about having a fresh start. If I could see that we're just not going to get anywhere here, I'd say to them, "Do you want to just have a fresh start?" And they'd
Yeah,
often just say, "Yes, I do." And
yes, please.
do you want to just have a hug and we have a fresh start? And I didn't even realize, when I kept using that with them, that they actually then would say to me, if they were starting to get really overwhelmed emotionally, "Can we just have a fresh start, Mum?" And I've noticed now that, when they're teenagers, and I find, these teenage years come with their own incredible challenges, is that I'm having to ask them for a fresh start as well. When I'm exhausted, they don't know what it's like to work with Gus Worland and the stress that that brings. But we're busy. As they get bigger, their problems feel bigger. They're tackling bigger challenges, and so sometimes, if I don't have the patience to be able to respond in the way that I know is going to support everyone's mental fitness, I call out. You know what? Can we just have a fresh start? Let's have a fresh start. Um, so I would love to ask you, I guess, this notion of a reset, this notion of putting our hand up and saying, I messed that one up. What advice do you have for other parents when it comes to admitting they've made a mistake, and being able to move forward with their kids rather than holding on to it or
Mm.
like feeling like they have to hold that line with them?
Yeah, I think that fresh start's a great idea. We call it a timeout or we call it a reboot. You know, Dad's having a bit of a Barry Crocker today. Dad's not feeling great today. Dad's tired or whatever. You know, it's incredible how smart the kids are as a general rule. They do understand. And once they hear that, it sort of tends to take a bit of the tension and stuff out of the situation. If you just all ego and this is my house and this is my rules and this is what we're doing, something
Mm.
you look back on later and go, gee whiz, I've just taken that too far and so forth. The kids remember that. That really can scar them and it can make them feel really uncomfortable to then come and share stuff with you. So I think being open, honest, and vulnerable, leading with vulnerability is the key. It doesn't mean we burst into tears every 5 minutes or have big, deep, and meaningfuls all the time, but to be able to have a conversation with your kid and be open and honest and say, you know what, I didn't get that right. I'm really tired. I'm sorry, can we just start again or can we reboot or something? I think the kid will really, really appreciate that. And I think knowing you're three, that's how they feel. I know they live in the world of mental fitness. They ask you how you mentally fit today, mum. My kids are the same with me. So we need to have more of those conversations. We need to have more families talking about the emotional muscle in your head, which is what is strained when you're going through that sort of pressure and you're trying to get it right and you muck it up.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And I've definitely gone to bed, a few times and just had to say to myself, you know what, Belle, you did the best you could today, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I think the role of being a parent is so bloody important to us that we hold ourselves to such a high standard. And when we don't meet that, we can feel really disappointed in ourselves. So I think
Yeah.
giving yourself a break when you have, I think you call it a Barry Crocker,
Yeah.
when you have one of those days, and then sharing that with your kids and your partner, it means everyone can move forward. And when I have said, you know what, Mum, mum didn't react in a way that she, really, really wanted to in that situation. What's blown me away is how forgiving our kids are. Like
Mm.
straight away, they're like, "It's all right, mum, I get it."
Yeah.
It just heads in a really beautiful direction when we can own it sooner rather than later, and our kids can go, right, okay, let's go, we can move on.
Yeah, it's a setting a standard. And they'll realize then that they might be able to say that to you as well back when, like, Mum, I didn't handle that well. I know that doesn't happen in a perfect world, but if you start having more in those discussions in your home, then you're in a pretty good place, I reckon.
Yeah, thank you. Well, on to my next question then. One of the things we talk about a lot at Gotcha is connection. It's one of our three protective factors. There's a deep body of evidence that shows people who feel more connected to others have more positive mental health outcomes. So we know that connection is really powerful. But sometimes in the busy life of being a parent, the moments where we can connect with our kids aren't always obvious because our schedules are so full. We're taking this one here, this one there. We've got commitments around work. Some of us have aging parents. We hold jobs in the community. Someone's running the canteen or turning up at soccer. Like our lives are genuinely busy, and we're doing all these things to show how much we care about our families in the community, but sometimes it makes it difficult to really find those moments to connect. So I wanted to ask you, when you look back on your own parenting, where have you found the most unexpected opportunities to connect, to really connect with your kids?
What I'd call in the average moments, the driving the kids somewhere, the walking back to the car after a game, win, lose, or draw, waiting at the chicken shop for chicken and chips on a Saturday afternoon with fresh
Yeah,
rolls because that's what you want to eat after when it's a bit miserable outside and you've just lost a netball game or a soccer game or something like that. Men in particular, I'm thinking ladies as well, but I certainly know from Jack's point of view with me, a lot of the good conversations came when we weren't looking at each other, where the conversation was happening when I was here and he was there, or he
yeah,
was there, and we were distracted by other stuff. So the conversation took longer. There was
yeah,
lots of conversations that took ages. Words didn't come naturally flowing, but we basically got to the point where I knew where he was coming from and he knew where I was coming from. With the girls, it was a bit more scattergun. Ella and Abby, you know them, they're pretty full on. They love a chat. So they would just come out and go blah, 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 and I just have to listen. And initially I would be like, sorry, what was that? Like what? And then am I meant to do something about that? And then, but all they wanted to do was get it out of their head. And I talk to people all the time now about just getting thoughts and stuff out of your head and realizing then that perhaps it's not quite as bad as you think it is, or you're
mm,
telling someone so they can give you some advice or they can listen and know that you're not alone anymore talking about that particular topic. So, for me, those moments of connection don't have to be this big grand thing. They
yeah.
normally happen by mistake, and they normally happen if you're consistently there doing stuff that is sort of normal,
Yeah.
because that way the child's not thinking this is a bit weird. What's going on here? It's just part of normal sort of living and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I find on the mornings I drive the boys to school, I actually don't mind sitting in a bit of traffic because having that time with them, and when they were little, it was the only time, I could strap them all in and they couldn't run off. But even as they've gotten a little bit older, it's a great space for us to just chat about things.
Yep.
And like you said, sometimes with boys, when they're not looking straight at you, not looking at you in the eyes, it can be easier to open up about things. So, I actually treasure those drives because those moments become less and less as they get older and older as well.
Well, the other thing, Belle, is that, sometimes you're in a car, for instance, the music comes on. You can have a bit of a,
Yeah.
like my kids were saying to me, do you know this song? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like In Excess. Like, of course, I grew up, I went and saw them live, and they're like, oh, this is this new song because someone's,
Done a
redone it or
remix.
whatever. Like, yeah. But you start having, and my kids started loving In Excess because there was that TV show about In Excess. They started listening to Fleetwood Mac and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, guys, I went and saw these guys when they were young. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And good
mm,
discussions came. My kids were singers, so um, Ella and Abby in particular loved to sing. In the end, Jack was sing along too, and there were some really lovely moments that we shared
yeah,
together. And then going to the concert because we fell in love with a certain artist or something like that. So those moments of connection are huge,
yeah.
and never take those moments for granted. It's a real privilege if you can get those moments.
Yeah, and I think thinking about them as moments to connect rather than just like transitions to where we're going is maybe
Yeah.
a shift in the way
Well,
to think about it.
you don't want to necessarily be going from A to B and using that as an opportunity to make that last work call or to check in with someone else. Actually, it's lovely if you can actually have a conversation or actually sit. I actually saw a friend today and she said, sometimes I sit with my kids in silence. It's like it's the only time in the day where everyone gets a moment where they're just like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that either. But because we're all connected now and Bluetooth and all that sort of stuff, it all sounds great. But sometimes it's wonderful just to sort of sit in silence or just listen to the radio or
yeah,
Spotify and just have those moments as well. Don't use it as I've got to, kids, I've got to quickly call someone, shh,
yeah,
and it's another work thing. And all of a sudden the kid goes, well, I'm going to put some headphones in myself. And that becomes what they do.
yeah.
That can be tricky too. But I understand everyone's got different responsibilities, and there's not a certain amount of time in the day, so you've got to get everything done. But these are all best case scenarios if you possibly
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thought of sitting in silence at the Elworthy household is actually something that I can't even imagine, but I know that that would possibly work for a lot of other families. Um, the other thing I think is having that one-on-one time. So sometimes when I can see that one of the kids is, maybe they're having a dig at their brother extra, more than they usually would, or you can just see, okay, things are going to kick off here, is recognizing how much our kids value true time with us. Even if it's just, I say to them, let's just go for a walk. I need you to come with me to walk the dog, or come with me and we're just going to get, the washing off the line, or whatever it ends up being. You know, I remember reading in the parenting books that, children need 15 minutes a day of dedicated connecting time with their parents. And if they get that, their cups are full. And I loved that advice at the time. And that's not always practical, but I've found that it can take as little as 5 minutes. Just really showing that child that you're there for them and that you're interested in them and that you see them, just by really just focusing in 4 or 5 minutes can make a big difference.
Yeah, and doing it consistently is awesome as well. That just becomes a bit of a habit for everyone. That, I used to have yes days with my kids where I just had to say yes to everything. So of course it was Macca's for brekkie, Macca's for lunch. We'd go to a movie. I bought a rabbit for Abby once. Like that's getting a bit out of control. But the simple thing is they remember those moments now. They remember me going, right, Abby, you and me, yesterday you got half an hour. And she go, right, we go to the IGA and she
Oh,
just da da da
good.
da. They're just these little moments of silliness, or you got 5 minutes now, you can have whatever you want. Let's go. Just trying to make as much fun and connection, but doing it one on one is absolutely key. There'll be people on this call that have more than three kids, and that's hard. But yeah, I used to love just I had my certain sporting teams that the kids love, so we'd all go to those sport together. But there were times where I knew Abby loved a certain thing, Ella liked a certain thing, and I'd just do that with them. And that was,
Yeah.
and Vix always appreciated that too. She had two at home, but she knew that the one that was with me was having a ball.
Yeah, and I think, doing that consistently every single day just might not be practical. It's definitely
No,
not, it's not something that I can do at the moment in the way that our life is scheduled, but doing it whenever we can,
yeah,
I think is great, a great default to go back to.
yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
One of the things, that we hear a lot about is the challenges in households around phones. And it would without doubt be the number one challenge, or the number one thing that the kids and I don't see eye to eye on. And I think I'm choosing my words carefully here. Um,
Yeah,
And every family's got a different situation, right? And different views and putting different systems and guidelines in place around the role of phones and what we do. But one thing that I try and fiercely protect is that time at dinner without phones. And I know that you guys, when the kids were younger, you had some pretty firm rules around phones, and I think that's worked really well for you. Can you tell us
Well,
a bit more
it was
about that?
it was World War III to start with, I can tell you that much. And I wasn't really on board either. This was a VIX thing, and I was like, ah. And then I went, you know what? That's really, really important. So what we did, we actually went and bought a basket. It was just a wicker basket. It was a cheap thing. And we all put our phones in there. They were charged, so they were powering up. So that's where all the phones were. So it was really important that we had turned off our phones. They were on silent or whatever it might be. And then we started with the conversation, what's the one good thing that's happened to you today? Now you can imagine the eye rolls that we had from the kids when that first happened. But it was incredible once we stuck to it. It's a bit like we talk about mental fitness a bit earlier,
Mm,
physical fitness. You've got to stick at something, right? You've got to put the line in the sand and say, I'm going to do this. So phones are at the table,
yeah,
all in the basket, and you're going to say something that's good that's happened to you today. And that started a conversation. And it wasn't easy, but eventually we got there. The
mm,
other thing that happened with that, Bill, was that we had then decided no phones in rooms.
yeah,
So if they wanted to have a little bit of phone time, that would have to be out with us doing that together. And when it also meant that they had to go into a basket before they went to bed. So there was no phone.
yeah,
They weren't sneaking it. It had to be all there together. And Vix and I had to have ours as well in there. So we all played the game together. So we bought what they call an alarm clock, which for most kids have no idea what that is, but you can still buy them. I bought 1,000 of them and took them on a country rugby league tour with Freddie Fittler, the New South Wales Origin coach at the time, and we gave a little backpack to kids that we saw, and we said, no more phones in your bedroom. You're going to wake up to this. We
yeah,
showed them how it works and how to, turn it to 6:30 or 7 o'clock when the alarm was going to go. They just looked and giggled and laughed. And then I said, I'd love you to own the first 3 minutes of your day. Just own the first 3 minutes by not picking up your phone straight away, strolling, going through your phone, your emails, your socials, your texts, and all that sort of stuff. Go to the loo, come back, wash your hands, come back, make your bed, sit where your phone used to sit, have a glass of water there and just sip it or scull it because you've been dehydrated overnight, and then sit there for a minute, in through the nose, out through the mouth, do a bit of breathing. Now, the giggles in the crowds when we were saying that was just like, oh my goodness, what's this bloke? Is he cuckoo land? But it's incredible if you stick to that habit for a little while. A, you don't have the phone, so you're not giving your
yeah,
first few minutes of every day to the device. And secondly, it allows you to hydrate, go for a wee, as well as get a little bit of breathing and stuff in. And people are still coming to me now saying, you talk to my son and daughter at that function. We've still got that alarm clock. We've had two new batteries that have gone in, and we all do it now. So all the phones are sitting in that basket overnight charging. So they have to go somewhere else to get it. And that just gives them that little bit of time and stuff. So I think that's super
mm,
important. Phones are addictive.
yeah,
They are for
yeah,
evil more than good most of the time. But in saying that, we can just slowly but surely not allow them just to be absolutely everywhere. It gives
yeah.
them a little bit of discipline, and you want to give them some good stuff to start their day.
Yeah, I actually love that, Gussie, and you've inspired me to go and buy an alarm clock. And do you know what? We bought them for the boys, but Mark and I still have our phones
Well,
connected.
that's not going to
So
work then.
yeah,
They'll walk in and say good night to you, or they'll walk in at some point and say, Mum, where is my blah blah blah? And you're
mm,
in bed or you're still in your room, and they'll look and go, well, what? Your
yeah,
phone's charged there. You have to be all in, and you have to show that that if you're doing it, they'll do it, and vice versa. You're
yeah,
all in this together
absolutely.
because we're addicted to our phones as well.
Absolutely. And
And
we'll get the same benefit
of
of
course,
having a moment to pause in the morning and not be dictated to, straight away what our phone is telling us. So
yeah.
yeah, you've inspired me. I'm going to jump on Amazon and buy an alarm clock for
And
Mark.
buy the batteries as well, like the little circular batteries that need to go in, because you don't want a big chunky thing with the radio and stuff. Just have
No.
those, just make sure you buy plenty of batteries, have them kicking around because once it doesn't work, because it
Yes.
won't because of the battery, and you then try to remember to get that battery,
Yeah.
it's a week and by
Put
then
it out.
the phones are back in the bedroom again.
Yeah. But I'm gonna have to find a nice one and not one that goes like beep beep beep. It's got to have a nice
It's
sound.
did it did it did it
Yeah.
did it
Not for
did it
me.
did it. That's the cheapy ones that I got for these kids, and it's super annoying. But it means that they turn it off and get stuck into their day a little bit better
Yeah.
than they were before, where they wake up to their music that they love or whatever it might be, and then they sit there and scroll for 10 or 15 minutes, and their whole
Oh, I
day
know.
starts with
Yeah.
this. I've got to catch
Exactly.
up with everything, and,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, this dopamine is into their system, and they're up and at 'em.
Yeah.
Let's be better parents and let's show that.
Yeah. No, 100%. I am going to do that. Thank you for that wisdom. I forgot about that story. You told me that ages ago, but I am going to action that as a parent. 'Cause I am definitely not a perfect parent when it comes to that.
No, that's the other thing, Bill. I think all the way through this chat, we've been chatting for 40 odd minutes. It's proven that we are throwing away perfect.
Yeah.
We try to say that to kids all the time. This BS world of social media where they look and they think, oh, I'm comparing myself to them that looks perfect. It's absolute nonsense. Most of the time it's bumbling and fumbling your way through the dark, doing your absolute best. Give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Realize it's a bloody tough gig and do the best you possibly can. And when you're under a bit of pressure, tell your kids, hey, I'm feeling it at the moment. Can you help me out? Don't have that bravado that you're just going to nail it. It's a difficult job. It's the hardest job on the planet. And as you said, for most of the time, we've never had a rule book.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if this is something about the mindset you have as a mother. This idea of, I'm responsible for keeping this family unit together and everyone else is doing it better than me. And I do think there's a real reluctance with mums in particular. It could be the case with dads as well, but on tapping into your village and I love that you are so open with your mates about parenting. And I remember when the kids were young thinking, I don't even know what I'm doing here. But everyone else on Instagram seems to know what they're doing.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and just not being open about the foibles, the mistakes that we make, and knowing that it is a real strength to tap into our village, whether it's our friends, whether it's you know grandparents or anyone, to really say to them, I'm just not sure about this. I think I need a bit of help, or I messed up. I don't think I've been great at that as a mum, definitely in the earlier years. But I think it's something that we talk a lot about at Gotcha, that, you know, it takes a village. We're part of our
Oh,
village, but it takes a village to raise these incredible kids we're raising.
well, the thing is that people say it takes a village to bring up a child. Well, it takes a village to bring up all of us, all us humans. And you're absolutely right. I remember a couple of stories if we've got time. The first one was I remember people were so excited when Jack was born. We took a long time to have children, and when Jack eventually came around, it was like this miracle. And I've got to say, the first 5 or 6 weeks, I was just faking it, going, "Yeah, it's awesome." I didn't have the connection with him. All he wanted to be was be his mum. He was a big unit with a massive melon. He just wanted to eat. And he didn't seem that sort of interested in me. And if he was, he sort of shouted and screamed about it. And I felt really awkward and I lost a bit of confidence as well. So I thought I just told people what I thought they should hear or what I thought they wanted to hear until someone said to me, why don't you just have a moment of the day that's yours? So make maybe bathing's your time. So, take Jack, for instance, into the shower with you, or let him lie on your tummy in the bath. And then once he's clean, you can take him out and you can get him ready for bed and all that sort of stuff. And then hand him back to Vix to give him his last milk for the day. All of a sudden I had a routine. All of a sudden I had something that I was excited to do. I got better at it. So I got more confident. And that
Yeah.
connection between Jack and I then became great. But you're right about the village. Like, I
Mm.
love it when my son now says, oh, I just spoke to Jacko. I just spoke to Bimo. I just spoke to Marcos. I just spoke to Clint. Just spoke to Hendo. All my mates who are, some of them are loose cannons, some of the great blokes, some are super smart, you know, and I go, oh, that's so awesome. But originally, when they first came
Yeah.
and said, my ego was wounded.
Mm.
When Jack was talking to them, or Ella and Abby decided to talk to someone else, their godparents or one of my mates'
Yep.
wives, I was like, what do you mean? Your mother and I are here. Sometimes they just want to talk to someone that's not their mum and dad. And if you've built a group of people around you, that village where they feel comfortable to
Yeah.
talk, it doesn't matter who they talk to. If they're getting it out, getting some advice and stuff, that's the greatest thing you can do. But it does take a bit of getting used to when they're not
Yeah.
asking you for
Yes.
that advice because you feel
Yeah.
that's your job. So park your ego, realize that, hey, they're getting advice, hopefully good advice because they're your friends and so forth. But the fact that they've got this village and they're not worrying alone, Bill, that's the absolute best thing that you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's just a realization that you're playing a role, you're such an important part of their lives. But if you can connect them with other mentors in their life, then that's
Yeah.
such a gift for them so that they can get other people's opinions on things. I think,
Forever too, forever,
yeah,
not just in that moment. They start thinking, oh, okay, that's my person.
yeah.
I've got a great mate, Clint, who is brilliant with Abby, and they've just got this wonderful connection. And they
Mm,
send each other music, they hear a bit of music, they share it on Spotify. And then that brings that connection. And then last time Abby was home, she went up to the farm with Clint and his family for a couple of days. And I'm just like, that is the greatest gift. And he feels so great. He's got two boys, feels like he's got a girl now that's a bit older, he can have a drink with, and they
yeah,
can talk. And he was a bit of a loosey goosey when he was younger. So he swallowed the map a little bit at times and goes, well, I probably wouldn't do that again. But it's not like he's saying don't do it because I did it.
yeah,
It's just a different way of looking at it. And when you're not their parents, it's lovely to get the auntie, uncle, the
yeah,
godparent, the best mates involved because that village can give them overall the information that they need.
yeah, absolutely. Now I've got one question that's come through. Um,
Sure.
So I'd love to know if you believe your own mental fitness as a parent affects your kids' mental fitness, and if you've ever had a moment that made you realize that your mental fitness or lack of has negatively or positively affected your child or one of
Yeah, look,
your
there's
children.
no doubt the story I said earlier about Jack when I lost the plot and had him out of one school and into a new school and stuff. That definitely affected Jack negatively. I think it probably stopped him coming to see me the next time there was a drama. I'm hoping that he saw Vix or one of my mates and so forth, but that's an absolute given. Um,
Mm,
and there's also been times, Bill, where my job, especially when I was doing breakfast radio, that's a 3:30 alarm, and then you've got to be on this real high at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you finished at 9, and you then got a plan for the next day. There were moments I was with the Pixies in the afternoon. I would do the pickup and so forth, and I would just go, okay, we're going to Baker's Delight. You're going to get a finger bun or you're going to get something. That way, I was feeling I was doing the good thing. I was giving them a treat and so forth. But there were times where I was sitting on the sofa after that, and Vix would say to me, the kids are saying, Dad, Dad, Dad. They'd say it 3 or 4 times before they got my attention. And I was like, what? Sorry, what? And it was because I was thinking of the next day. I was tired. I felt like I was jet lagged for a decade. I
yeah,
felt that way anyway.
yeah,
And there's no doubt that I thought, hey, I've got a good job. It's paying the bills. This is what I'm doing this for my family. But there's no doubt in the world that I let things go. Ego takes over. You go to a few events that you shouldn't go to because you're tired.
yeah,
You listen to good and bad.
yeah,
People's thoughts of you and so forth, which means you
yeah,
come home in a either over the top mood or a little bit down mood. So
yeah,
yeah, again, a learning process for me and having a good partner to bring me into line. Like there's nothing quite like seeing yourself on a billboard and do really well in the ratings and you come home and someone asks you to pick up the dog poo. Like that's a
yeah,
real straight back down to earth. I needed that as a
yeah,
character. And I think
yeah.
all of us need to realize that, we're going to fumble and bumble a bit and life's a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, and I think, recognizing that no parent has a completely stable mental health situation or state. every single one of us experiences the whole range of human emotions.
Yeah,
And even if we are practicing our mental fitness regularly, we are guaranteed to experience loss. We are guaranteed that things will go um, in directions that we don't want them to. Like that is the one thing that we can guarantee is that we will all face ups and downs throughout our life. And even if we really do work on our mental fitness, the reality of that is that we do feel all the feels, and we absolutely have to be allowed to. And I think it's important to share that with the kids, to let them know, mum's had a really stressful day today, and I think I just need a bit of, a bit of space. If they're younger, and you recognize that you need that space, it's thinking about who in your village you can reach out to give you a bit of breathing space, whether it's that you just need to go for a walk or a reset. If the kids aren't old enough to understand, or physically you need to be with them. And I think if we take ownership of that, then we can ask our kids to be open to that as well. And I think that's part of being a human. That's part of recognizing that this is what life's all about. I think
yeah,
if our challenges and the way that we're feeling becomes persistent, and we find that, it's been 2 weeks and I've been feeling this way every single day or on and off in quite a big way for 2 weeks, then it should be a signal to us that maybe this is more than just the ups and downs of life. Maybe I need to go and have a chat to someone else about this. So I think the everyday mental fitness is going to go up and down, but also recognizing when this is impacting me on a more regular basis is really important as well.
yeah, 100%. And we would be the best example that we can possibly be. But there'll be people on this call that are in a very caring, loving relationship, and there's two of you, and that's huge, right? That's what I had, and that's what you have with Mark. But there's also going to be people on here like my mum. My dad left the family home when I was young, and she had my brother and I, and she didn't have all that support and stuff too. So it's very difficult and different for different people. So what we're trying to say in this last hour or so is it is bloody hard. Give yourself a break. Do the
Yeah.
best you possibly can. But if you're not worrying alone, which is our whole mantra at Gotcha4Life, is it means you're building a village around you so you don't have to go through it alone. That's the best thing you can possibly do. Build that village.
Yeah, I think it's such a great reminder to keep coming back to if you do find that you are worrying about something regularly, is you don't have to worry alone. Um, so I think time is really getting away from us now, Gussie. I think I might finish with one last question for you,
Sure.
and that's if a parent is listening today. They've heard us talk about all sorts of things. You could probably discard quite a lot of it. Um, but if there's two or three things that you would love them to remember from our chat tonight,
Mm.
what would they be?
Um, don't worry alone. Absolutely the key thing, and that's in life as an adult and a friend as well as a parent. Don't
Mm,
worry alone. The village is absolutely key. Work out who your people are so you've got these people around you that can help you and support you, and you'll support their village as well. It's just not one way traffic here. Like if you're helping someone with their kid, it goes both ways. And I probably learnt this a little bit too late, but no ego. If you can parent with as limited amount of ego as possible, then you normally come from a pretty good place. So there's three things there I've written down, Belle. Don't worry alone, work out who your village is, and no ego is key, is what I've written. So there's
mm,
3 points. And if you remember one of those and implement one of those, I think it'll be good. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of these webinars. I've done a lot of panels. I've done a lot of speaking. It's all great, but it's not until you put it into action it really matters. So
yeah,
actioning these things are key. If we don't action them, then nothing actually will ever happen.
yeah,
So pick something, the smallest thing, the biggest thing, whatever you think you can handle, and do
yeah,
that for a while. If it's the alarm clock and not having the phone in your room, if that's it, that'll be huge in its own right. So just do that and see if you can do it for a month. And I promise you, the more you can do, a month later, you add something else. That's the key. But be easy on yourself. This stuff is not easy. It is really, really difficult. But I don't think there's more important conversations that we should be having.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think we can sometimes feel overwhelmed with all that information. So I love the idea of just choosing one thing. Just choose one thing that you think you can do in the next week and give that a go. And you'd
Yep.
be surprised of how even just one small tweak can really make a big difference. I
Yep.
think that's something that we forget when we think we've got to do all these things.
Yeah.
Actually, just try one thing, stick to it,
Yeah.
and see what happens. And
Yeah.
then you can always go back and try the other things on the list if that wasn't for you.
Yeah, and I promise you, it won't be easy. It will. It won't. And people will say, "Ah, it's putting a phone there instead of there and getting alarm." It's difficult because we've done it all since the moment we've had mobile phones like the Apples and the Samsungs. They're brilliant, right? They're so great and they're addictive and whatever. But if you're not waking up with your phone, it means you're not going to bed with your phone. If you're not going to bed with your phone, you're more likely to get to bed a bit earlier. All the good stuff comes from it. So, try that. It'll be difficult. It'll be
100%.
difficult enough.
I am buying the alarm clock. I know
Okay.
that message is for me. Um, Thank you, Gus. I've absolutely loved chatting to you about this. Our conversation has probably been more focused than many of our usual conversations that we cover on solving all of the problems in the world. So, a huge thank you to you, and a huge thank you to everyone who has listened in tonight. Just a couple of quick messages to wrap up. The first is just to remind you that if you found any element of our chat during this session emotional, make sure you take a moment to care for yourself. And if any strong feelings persist, please do chat to a trusted friend or your GP. And please know that support services are always available. And we have a whole list of them on our website, gotcha4life.org/help resources. If anyone is still on the call, please also take a moment to answer a few questions. So, we really do want to know what you think. We want to make sure that these webinars keep bringing interesting, helpful content to our parent community. So, please do take a moment to scan that QR code or click the link that we've got in the chat and let us know what you think. If you have any other questions or ideas or requests, or you'd like to get in touch with Gotcha4Life, please email schools@gotcha4life.org. Thank you so much, everybody, and can't wait to have another conversation soon.